Assalamu alaikum everyone, and welcome to The Good Tree, the place inspired by the verse in the Qur'an of a good word that is like a good tree, whose roots are firm and branches reach great heights. You are joined today by your hosts, myself, Fizza and Noor.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. This series is all about how we can perfect our morals in all of our relationships. In today's episode, we will be discussing our relationship with siblings.
We are delighted to be joined today with Sayyid Hussain Makke. Sayyid Hussain is a student of the Islamic Sciences. His academic pursuits include a BA in journalism from Brunel University and an MA in religions and global politics from SOAS. Born in London, Sayyid Hussain left England at the age of 21 to engage in the classical study of Islam at the seminary in Lebanon, where he continues to reside. He is often involved in community work, mentoring and lecturing in different cities around the world. Sayyid Hussain, assalamu alaikum and welcome to The Good Tree.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. Today's discussion is one that probably resonates with many of us, regardless of age or gender. Those of us that have siblings are all too aware of this unique and at times complex relationship. It is a huge and interesting area of discussion, but time is short. So Sayyid, we're starting today's discussion by asking, what duty or responsibility do we have towards our siblings? And are there specific rules depending on their gender and where they rank, i.e. eldest to youngest?
Sure. So, of course, within the Islamic tradition, it's been made clear to us through our narrations how important it is when it comes to the relationships within the family, and as we know it to be referred to as Silat al-Rahim. And we have responsibilities to not only our siblings and not only our parents, but even our extended family. However, when it comes to our immediate family, those responsibilities, of course, are greatest, and this ranks the highest. When it comes to age, generally speaking in Islam, we have respect towards the elder. So then when it's within the family, then it's only natural that when a sibling, first of all, you have the relationship of Silat al-Rahim, and this person is older than you. So then there's two ways in which you're going to be respecting them. But at the same time, from the eldest side, we see within Islam, we are told to have mercy upon our younger ones. We see this in the traditions of the Ahlul Bayt. We see it in the relationships of the Ahlul Bayt themselves. In fact, it's not always the older protecting the younger. Sometimes the younger goes towards protecting the older. And this is something that we see in Karbala, most of all, which a lot of people don't know. And I get goosebumps right now, just as I'm saying it, subhanAllah. Ali al-Akbar, who most people think is the eldest Ali of the sons of Imam al-Hussein, is not actually the eldest. Imam Zayn al-Abidin, alayhi salam, is the eldest. But Ali al-Akbar took that upon himself to be regarded as Akbar and went out there and was killed, sacrificing himself for his brother so that his brother was not to be killed. And this is why when Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, when he was in Kufa and Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad was surprised and said, "You're Ali, son of Hussein?" And he said, "Yes, I am." He said, "Didn't we kill Ali?" He said, "No, you killed my brother, my younger brother, Ali al-Akbar. I am Ali Sajjad Zayn al-Abidin." And of course, the narration continues and he says, "Did your father not know any other name than Ali?"
Yeah.
And he said, my father loved his father very much. So, subhanAllah, we even see there someone like Ali al-Akbar who sacrificed himself for his imam and his older brother. We see, I'm sure you're going to ask about the relationships of the imams with each other later on, so I won't go too much into that right now. But yes, there's of course a responsibility and a duty where we protect each other, where we love each other, where we support each other, where no matter what, we are always supposed to be there for each other. That if you have a sister, never for the sister to feel like she has to get married in order to have a life later on. No, she has a family always. And if she has brothers, then the brothers have to make sure that, listen, you're always going to be good and you're always going to be okay and you always have a home with me and I have a home with you. But if you decide to get married, then you get married, bismillah. And likewise with the brother. And if we don't have these siblings, then for us to have this relationship with our parents.
MashaAllah, ahsant. you gave me goosebumps because you made it all come from an angle of love and respect. I think sometimes when we look at the relationship with our siblings, it's a bit muddled with other feelings as well. But you're directing it all towards love for one another, care for one another.
Of course. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam said, هل الدين إلا الحب? Is religion anything other than love? He said that. Some people say that they bring the narration where he says love and hate, but there's a narration where he says just love. هل الدين إلا الحب? Is it other than love? This is why I don't understand when people speak about Islam without love, or when they criticize me, for example, when I for speaking about Islam only in love terms. Of course, Islam has several different fields, but love is the center, and that's why Rasulullah is not like Isa Ruhullah or Musa Kalimullah or Ibrahim Khalilullah. He is Habibullah. He is the beloved of Allah.
That's so beautiful. Inshallah, we can adopt these, kind of characteristics with our siblings. Stemming from that, I just want to ask, because sometimes it might be easy to, let's say, have respect and care and love towards your sibling if they're very much like you. But we see in a lot of families, and I know a lot of families like this, and, everyone can see this for themselves in TV programs. There are sometimes families where there is one member of the family who is at a clear disadvantage. So a child, for example, who has a very visible disability, or even sometimes it's just learning ability. Sometimes we don't like to discuss this a lot. We brush it under the carpet, but you might have a family who all look a certain way, and then there's the one child they call the black sheep of the family because that child looks completely different to their siblings. And the amount of comments they get from childhood until they grow up. I mean, I know someone who looked completely opposite to their mum, let's say. And it was a girl. So that girl growing up always assumed she was ugly because her mum was always made to, be described as beautiful. Anyway, my point is that when there is someone who is different to the rest of the family with something, how then do we treat our sibling who is different, and that difference has been made known and is obvious and is noticeable?
First of all, we have to understand where these values come from, first of all. As in, who said that having a beautiful face is the value that we should be focusing on? Or who said that, so there are different values that people focus on, that people always comment on. So if everyone's saying you're beautiful all the time, even though, so first of all, in Islam, nice comments are all well and good, but constant praise is not recommended because you're going to blow up this person's ego. That's the first thing. So in Islam, we have that. So you say nice comments, you appreciate, but you don't say that all the time. So you don't blow up the person, you protect them from their own selves. That's the first thing. Second thing, in Islam, we have a different value system. We see beauty as something being contrast to piety before everything else. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's value of what a human being is piety, al-taqwa. Akramakum indallahi atqakum. So this is what really we should all be trying to go towards. Now, of course, I'm speaking ideally. Now, practically speaking, people, they are affected by these things, by not being the smartest, not being the strongest, and not being the prettiest. If in a family, we notice that this person is the black sheep or has what we call aqdat al-naqs, so they have this inferiority complex. If we can find this from the very beginning, of course, it's going to need a family who is caring, because without a family who is caring or aware, then this child's no one's going to be helping this child. So we have to be, of course, educating the parents and the siblings anyway. But let's just say that they are aware right now. And let's just say that they realize this in the black sheep right now. What should they do? Of course, they should all be pitching in and being honest with each other as well. So hopefully they have good relationships with each other. And how can we provide a platform in order to bring our younger sibling or older sibling or sibling who is suffering up to speed with whatever they're suffering with? Whatever if they are disabled, then everyone has to pitch in with helping them and serving them, because this is not something that's going to go away. And to do it in a way in which you make the person feel like this is your honor, before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I know I'm speaking ideally here, but I mean, this is what the Islamic requirement would be. If the person is saying, well, you know, that's hard on me, then we're speaking about something else. Then I have to speak to each one independently and tell them, you know, you're actually serving someone here, this is your ticket to heaven, etc., etc. But we don't want to go too into the nitty-gritty of the details of every single individual in this instance. We want to talk about what the responsibility is. The responsibility would be to serve this person. And in truth, yes, it's an honor and it's a straight ticket to heaven. And a lot of the time, subhanAllah, that person is the reason for that family sustaining themselves, is the reason for that family having soft hearts and bringing them together. How many families do I know who the parents have broken up in divorce and the siblings don't talk to each other, but the one disabled child is the one everyone loves, and the way everyone sees each other when they all take him out to the park or they all take him out to swimming, that's when everyone gets together. So it's a rahmah at the same time. When it's someone who's not disabled, but someone who lacks in certain qualities, like at school, doesn't get the best grades, someone who feels that they're not as pretty, then the brothers and sisters have to gather around this individual and make them feel like this is not a problem and empower them. Show them all the other parts of themselves that are beautiful. They are intelligent. Some people, they're not intelligent in exams, for example, but they're very streetwise. They know how to negotiate. They become great businessmen or women. So it's not always a gorge. And you have to remind the person, hey, a paper with ink on it, with a certain number, does not define who you are. This is just something that you weren't very good at, but you can't judge a fish and a lion and a monkey on which one climbs a tree better. They all have very different skills. And hashakum, yani, no one's a monkey and no one's a fish, but some people want to be a lion, right? But you can't judge people with different skills on the same thing. And besides, going into something else, our education, our curriculums are not in the best state anyway in order to get the best out of young people. So then for those that feel like they're not as intelligent as their siblings, for them not to feel like the problem is always with them. Of course, if they're putting the effort in. If they're not putting the effort in, if they're just lazy, that's something else. Then we have to try to encourage them not to be lazy. That's a whole different problem. But we're talking about something that, let's say, is inherent. When it comes to beauty, physical beauty, to make this person have a strong, educated root in order to go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and receive that ultimate love from God, to know deep within how much Allah loves her or loves him deep down, and get the empowerment from God there. And of course, the siblings will have to do their part. But I believe when it comes to someone who's suffering from that, to realize that the value is never on the outside. The value is always on the inside. As cliche as it sounds, and as cliche as, you know, people want to make it out to be, that's what Allah sees. Allah sees what's in your heart. And this body that only is around for 70, 80 years, it leaves you and it never comes back again. That this body is very temporary and you live forever. So if you want to really understand the value of what true beauty is, then you must understand the finite, limited life of the body. Because your real beauty, your true beauty is afterwards. That's why people get raised in the afterlife as who they really are. And you see in our narrations in Barzakh, you see beastly creatures, but you identify them and you know who they are. And they look like that because that's their truth. And this is the beautiful part of it all. If you just go a few minutes on Instagram and everything else, I know it's very easy for me to say, but this is the truth. Sure, we're bombarded with images of beautiful people all the time. But if you just go on Instagram and you see all these different celebrities who just paid for their beauty, they just had a certain amount of money and they did surgery and now they look beautiful, shows you how valueless it is. It shows you how someone who does not care truly in their heart, of course not all celebrities, but a lot of them, you know, you look all around, the Kardashians and everyone else basically just living in their own little world, but apparently are the symbols of beauty in the modern world right now. And those symbols change all the time. If you look back 100 and 200 years, you'd see beauty was something else. In the royal family, if you look at the paintings, beauty was someone who had very pale white skin and, you know, had their faces back and the way in which they would squeeze their waist and everything else. Right now, the body is seen completely differently than it used to be. And you have to look at what parts of the body right now are seen as attractive to show you how backwards humans have gone in this civilization right now. So to educate this person on what beauty actually means. That's where I'm going with this. To show them beauty is with Allah, and Allah sees what true beauty is. You will realize this in the afterlife, and that you will only have those around you right now who you really want in your life, are those who see that beauty within anyway. Otherwise, if people are around you only because of how beautiful you look on the outside, then what benefit are they when you're hurt, when you can no longer offer them that beauty, when you can no longer offer your husband or wife that beauty? Does that person just leave you? Or is it about what's in the heart? Of course, now something else about marrying and being attractive and everything else, that's something else that we can talk about, which is important. I'm talking right now, beauty in truth. If the person feels naqs within themselves, then to educate them on what true beauty is. And this will be upon their family first and foremost.
Ahsan, thank you so much. And I just want to clarify, when you're speaking, what age are we speaking about? Because I imagine these problems can arise since early childhood. I mean, and into adulthood. What if you're someone who, as children, unfortunately, you didn't make the right choices with your siblings? And then as you've grown up, you've got this naqs that you mentioned. There's this inferiority. One sibling feels they are completely inferior to the rest of their siblings, and you're all adults now. How do you deal with it then?
If we're speaking to that person, if the person came to me and told me, I feel very inferior to my siblings, then if I'm speaking to that person, I would tell them, you need to let your sibling know. So let's say their older brother, older sister, they had this relationship with them. Right now, the relationship is good. But when they were younger, they suffered because of this. They felt always below them. And now they always feel like they're in their shadow. I think it's important to make a phone call, a very important phone call. You call your sibling. And this goes for every relationship where the person is really wounded and you want to heal this relationship. And you begin the phone call with, look, I need to tell you something. And it's really important. And I need you to not speak as I speak. I just to get it all out. And the person will probably be like, Inshallah khair, what's happening? Are you okay? Like, look, I'm okay. Everything is fine. I'm safe. But there's a lot on my chest that I really need to tell you. But I really need you not to speak and let me speak. Okay. And then you begin. I love you very much. And I remember all the times we were together and everything else. This goes for mom, dad. This goes for brother, sister. This goes for anyone you have that wound in a relationship with. And this is a technique that we use. I use a lot with the young men who I mentor when they want to heal their relationships. And then you let it out and you speak and you let it all go. And you do it in a nice way, not in a way where you're pummeling the person. And a lot of the time you show them that, and you realize a lot of the time you want their appreciation. A lot of the time it comes back to that. You want to be recognized by that person. A lot of the time that's where the wound comes from, where a person has a wound with their sibling, with their mom, with their dad. It's because they wanted to be seen and they were not seen, especially by that person. And so when you're telling that person that really is what I wanted was your recognition that I didn't get. And because of that, my whole life has turned into a dark version of what it could have been deep within me. And this wasn't apparent for everyone to see, but this is how I live. When you let that person know and you're honest and you're blunt and you're raw, of course, inshallah, that person, the basis by which you're making this call is that this is a person who you love and they're close to you, so they're not going to turn around and make a fight with you. Yani. If that's the case, then there's no qabiliyah, then you don't want to make this call, but usually there's qabiliyah. So that person usually will speak to you in a whole different way. And the view they have of you is different now. A lot of the times they don't know. And we don't communicate this problem that we go through with them. We don't communicate how we're feeling and they have no idea. So how can they help us? How can they give us what we actually want, which is a lot of the time their recognition? Or if it's not, it was the recognition of mom and dad, then how can they help us speak to mom and dad? How can we solve this dilemma if they don't know and there's no communication? But once you do this and you show your vulnerability and they show their vulnerability, you're going to have a whole new lease on this relationship. And inshallah, you can begin a new chapter and a new step. And if it's not that simple and that easy and that quick, then at the very least, you can begin the conversation and begin the steps and identify what the actual problems are and what you actually need, because you have to identify what you need. What do you need? What do you need from them? So once you speak to them And hopefully you would have contemplated beforehand about what you need, to let them know what you need. And if you haven't, then to figure it out with them. What is it that you need? What can I do for you to bring you out of this? And if it's just your love, if it's just your recognition, then that's simple enough. If it's your time, that's simple enough. If it's something more, then they can begin to discuss that.
Thank you so much for that. Stemming from that, we also have the problem of jealousy. So a lot of times siblings will have jealousy between them as children. And sometimes this jealousy might not be apparent. You might think, oh, this is childish, or oh, it wasn't real jealousy. But as you grow into adulthood, you realize, oh, whoops, this has had a knock-on effect on my feelings about this particular thing, for example.
Yes.
So how do we deal with it then? How do we deal with this jealousy?
Again, I'm going to have to choose an individual and speak from their perspective. So let me say, for example, an individual now feels like their siblings are jealous from them.
Okay.
Shall we go with that one?
Yeah.
Okay.
I want you to go with the other one too as well, please.
Okay, yeah, we'll figure that out. So if someone was like, okay, my siblings are jealous from me. First of all, we identify what are they jealous of exactly. Because a lot of the time, they might not be jealous. They might be jealous. We have to speak about how we got to that judgment. Let's just say they're jealous right now. We're sure they're jealous. Okay, they're jealous. There's no doubt about the jealousy. Now, my brother, my sister, they're jealous of me. I identify what they're jealous of. Is it money? Is it inheritance? Is it whatever else? And not everyone might agree with me on this, personally. But the way in which I prefer to be personally with my siblings is even from now. When I speak to my siblings now, and I speak to my parents, and we speak about like inheritance and things like this, I tell them from now, guys, whatever happens in the future, inshallah, we don't have to see, our parents not with us, but whatever happens in the future, 100% always, you guys are my priority. I don't want to be in any dispute with anyone over any money or land or house or anything else. I don't care. Haba'an manthura, it can go. It came and it went. It's going to go to someone else after we die anyway. It's going to be a dispute between my children and your children and whoever else. So let's not allow it to get there from the very beginning. We have to realize what is the priority. The priority is me and you. We'll discuss what happens with it later on. Do you want to sell it? We'll split it 50-50. We'll do what we have to do. But we have to have this very blunt, honest conversation and relationship with each other that you're always number one. And if there is ever any doubt, we reaffirm it. Hey, don't forget, you're my number one, or there's always loyalty between us, to always build upon that loyalty, never to take it for granted. Okay, this is just me personally. Let's say the person already is jealous though, already jealous of this person. Then if you have wealth, then show them your care for them by giving them some of that wealth. Again, not everyone might agree with me, but if my brother is always jealous of me and I keep buying him nice gifts, it's not going to make too much sense for him to stay jealous of me. It's going to be very illogical. Okay, I'm jealous of him because he has money, but then he's buying me, a nice chair and a nice table, and he's very thoughtful, and he takes me out for meals and whatever else. Slowly, you're going to remove that jealousy from the person. Now, it's going to take a lot of spiritual strength on your side for you not to say, you know what, they're jealous, forget them. They forget all the good I did for them, forget them. That's going to be on your side, to be spiritually strong and merciful and understand that that person is not as strong as you and they need your spiritual strength. So you have to do your part even more right now. So you have to put in 150% if they're putting 50%, so you can bring them up. But on the other side, if that person is jealous, well, the first thing is to be aware of your jealousy. If the person is not aware of the jealousy, then it's never going to get fixed. Ever. It's a disease of the heart. Envy is a disease of the heart. And it's the disease of shaitan. Envy is the disease of why him, why not me? That's why shaitan, why Adam, why not me? He wanted to be the one who is bowed down to. So for one who is jealous, they have to realize this jealousy first of all. And once the jealousy is realized, they have to begin to try to tackle it, to look at their blessings, their own blessings, jealousy of anyone or anything. This is something they have to try to rectify. And if they can't rectify it on their own, to seek help with, a mentor or someone else, someone they can confide in, to help them rectify this disease in the heart.
Hussain, thank you so much. I think that summarizes it, because like you say, we kind of need to look at individual cases. Yeah, definitely. I think sometimes we don't want to take responsibility for things. So we can blame all the circumstances, blame our parents, blame this person, that person, but we don't want to take responsibility that maybe I can do something about this. Maybe I should be working on myself not to be jealous. Or maybe I should be working on myself not to make others jealous of me. Sometimes we make people jealous of us.
Very good point, actually. That's a very good point that I didn't even mention. Not to flaunt the blessings that you have for jealousy and for hasad, and for hasad. So on both ends, you want to protect yourself as well.
I wanted to ask a question regarding big brothers. They seem to have this hypothetical card, which they say, I'm a big brother or I'm your eldest, that brothers like throwing at their sisters. Do these cards come with the expiry date?
The expiry date? I mean, it's not about time. I don't think that's being a big brother. It's not about time. It's not that it expires at any time, because there's no law that makes the brother the person in charge. So there is no expiry date to that law, because there is no law. But there always has to be respect, as we mentioned, respect to the elder and mercy to the younger. So we expect the younger sister to have respect for her older brother, and for the older brother to have mercy towards his younger sister. And this has to be truly sincere. And what I mean by that is it can't be hypocritical. So if someone is, as you say, throwing the card around, then it makes it seem like that person is using the card, perhaps hypocritically, perhaps using it as a bully. A lot of these boys, they have an issue, and they have their own defense mechanisms, and they're not actually truly masculine. They think that to be a true masculine is to bully, get your way and shout, to rule the kingdom, as they say. There are different archetypes for a man. One of those masculine archetypes, the central one, is the king archetype, and this is discussed in the book King, Warrior, Magician, Lover by psychologist Robert Moore, which is a great, fantastic book I really recommend for those who are interested in boy and man psychology. But a lot of these young men never actually get out of the boy psychology and turn into man psychology. They think that being a man is to fight and to shout, and they're always trying to take their aggression into conflict. But this is not a man. This is actually the baby, the young spoiled brat that hasn't actually grown out of their childhood. And a lot of the times they don't, even into the 40s and 50s, they're still like that in their marriage, in their workplace, with their children. And they wonder why they have such bad relationships. It's because they never actually got out of that zone. They call it, in the book, they call it, so when the child is born, the divine child, they call it, based on the concept of baby Jesus, the divine child. Everyone comes to visit, everyone loves, everyone gives. And if you don't slowly show the divine child how to break out of the boy mentality into becoming mature, a mature masculine, a man, and a good king, not a tyrant king, and not a weakling king, then that person in all of their relationships will try to dominate them. And if their status is ever questioned, they will try to squash whoever the questioner is. And that happens a lot with younger sisters, because they think, what? Who are you? Where'd you come from? I'm the one who's, the first, I'm the older boy, I'm the one who is going to carry on my dad's legacy, blah, blah, blah. And then you're just here for a ride, basically, and you're going to get married and you're going to go somewhere else. So you have to listen to me. And if you think about it, there's nothing Islamic about that whatsoever. Actually, it's very tyrannical. It's got Bani Umayyah written all over it, and it has nothing to do with us. With our tradition, we have, of course, that's why the father is the welly of the daughter, and why the brother is supposed to be someone who is, yes, protective, but protective in a healthy way, like Abu Fadl Abbas alayhi salam is for Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam. In that way, where Abu Fadl feels like he's her servant. He is her brother, but he also feels like he is her servant. He has her as his priority in life. He's very sensitive to her sensitivities. He does not want her to be harmed. He didn't even want to be taken back to the camp, so she doesn't see him in his state after he had given everything that he had given. He's prioritizing her over his own life, and he'd lost his hands and mutilated. That's a completely different understanding than being the boss. And anyone who is anyone would say the greatest archetype of masculinity within our tradition is going to be either between Imam Ali or Abu Fadl Abbas. in the way in which they show that masculinity. So there is nothing weak about Abu Fadl Abbas. But then if you want to exemplify your strength, you do that through care, through being sensitive with your sister, through understanding, because you want your sister to be able to speak to you about everything. You don't want her to come and hide things from you if she's interested in a guy. You don't want her to do things in secret. You want her to be able to ask you. And because you have experience about who guys are, then you can advise her truly. Then you would say, because she trusts you, that when she's going to speak about someone, you're not going to go beat them up. That you're going to sit down with her and you're going to take into consideration everything she's saying. Even if a guy was not the nicest guy, at least this way she trusts that you're someone who is logical, who not understands, who can give her a practical solution, and who can be there when she does have that heartbreak, but also that there are red lines, and that those red lines cannot be crossed. So subhanAllah, like with my sister personally, and she doesn't mind me speaking about this, just for the sake of it, me and my sister are very close. And she always, if she was ever to get to know someone, she always says, yeah, you have to speak to my father, but you also have to speak to my brother. I don't tell her to do that. She does that. He doesn't have to speak to me, but she finds it very important that the person speaks to me, you know? And then whatever advice I give her, alhamdulillah, I never have to make it a rule. Whatever advice I give, she takes it on, and then she stops right there. If I think good of the guy or I don't think good of the guy, she takes it in and she considers it. And there's not been one time where we had a disagreement where, yeah, we're not always on the same page on everything, but we don't have a disagreement ultimately on the conclusion. We find a way, a compromise, and so far so good. We've always been together, and it's always going to be that way. So this is something that I'm an older brother. I'm the oldest in my family, so I'm speaking now as an older brother, not as Sayyid Hussain Makke, but as an older brother. I think that the older brother has to lead by example, has to protect his siblings, be there for them. He's the oldest, he's had the most time, he's perhaps learned the most from life, so he has to be able to try to give them all a head start, whether it be through wisdom, through religion, through finance, through everything else. He has a responsibility there. This is the least the older brother can do, the least.
That's so beautiful. May Allah protect all of your siblings.
Protect you and your family.
Inshallah. You spoke about welly, so I just wanted to ask, what are the rules of a welly, and can a younger brother ever take that position? Because it's usually said for an older, but if he's the only brother and he's got sisters but he's younger than them, can he take that position of a welly?
No, he can't take the position. The position is for the father.
Okay.
And if it's not for the father, it goes to, sometimes, according to some scholars, the grandfather, if he's alive, but not for the younger brother. Of course, speaking and considering that the woman is of a mature age, yani. So if she wants to get married, then we need permission of the welly. If the welly is dead, then some scholars go towards the grandfather. But if she's of a mature age, then she is the wali upon her own self. Waliyat nafsuha.
So is the brother ever a wali?
No.
No. So is this a cultural fad?
No, there's no wali who is like a brother. This is not within our tradition.
So even if the father passes away and the grandfather's not there, it doesn't go to the
as in you mean to ask the brother for permission to marry the woman?
Yeah, or like whatever.
No, legally speaking, no. She's mature, her own age. She has her own money. She makes her own decisions. But again, she has to be. She can't be as they say in the tradition. Forgive my French. They call it a safih or safiha, right? So if someone is not of mature thinking, but usually that's for like a very young child. So they say that she has to be Rashida, right? And usually a young woman who is 25 years old is a Rashida. So if her father was to die at that age, she doesn't need her brother's permission to get married. However, what I would say is, if my father was not alive and my sister got married without my blessing, I would be very hurt by that. And that's not about law though. So we have to understand that's not up to do with law or being a wali. That's just based on our relationship. So I would not recommend in any case for someone to do that. Of course, if the person's reservations are not reasonable, if he's being unreasonable, then whatever. But if he's being reasonable, this person, there are reasons why I don't want to get married to this person is not good for you, take my advice, then I would recommend that take the advice of the brother. He's experienced, he knows, of course, considering that, there's reason to believe him. But if he's being unreasonable, no, I don't want you to marry him because, for example, he's from this country. right? But everything else is fine, but he's just from this country that he doesn't like, then that's not very reasonable. But you have to try to bless it out as much as you can with your brother, so that you don't fall into that, because they're going to be brother-in-laws and you want them to speak to each other and everything else, and you have to speak to the husband and tell him, please, for me, talk to him, be his friend and everything else. And so there's ways to do that, man. You guys know what to do. It's better than I do. So
Thank you. Just want to move on to some of the other sort of guidelines that we have, that we shouldn't be breaking ties with our siblings or blood relatives. However, we all know that there are certain times or situations where things do become difficult between siblings, sometimes to the point where, unfortunately, you perhaps don't want to continue talking to them or take a break or something, I don't know, along those lines. So it can be quite toxic. So what is the absolute minimum? I mean, is there such thing within our sort of scriptures about keeping a healthy distance with our siblings?
The only way that you should keep a distance with your siblings is if you fear the harm upon yourself. So if they're going to harm you or your children, and I don't mean by violence only, also through different ways, being manipulative, being someone who is going to put doubts about religion into your children's minds, for example. Sometimes you have siblings who do that. They're not religious like you, and they want to free your kids or whatever else they think they're doing. If you find that person is doing that, then yeah, you're going to have to keep a distance. And you still want to be able to check up on them from time to time. So I would say it's keeping a distance for those reasons, whilst always having your hand open for them to return. And if they want to be there within the rules that you have stipulated, reasonable rules, like don't put seeds of doubt about religion into my children's minds, you don't have that right. If they want to stick to that, then that's fine. But if you find that they're doing that, then yeah, you're going to be distant. However, if it's something more personal, if it's something, they just let you down in something in life and you're very upset with them, you should never get to a point where you think, I'm never going to talk to them again. You should always have that mercy and forgiveness within your heart. If they're not harming you and they're not continuing to harm you, especially if they're sorry, then you want to be able to forgive them. And if they're not sorry, then you ask Allah to forgive them and you keep your hand extended, but you don't always try to, go out and, as we say, beg friend them. You're not going to beg friend them, right? But you keep your hand out there. Whenever they want to be friends again, you're not going to be someone to say no. And you always let them know. You message them on Eid, for example, right? So there's always communication. You message them on Eid. You never ever cut off communication until they want to come back. But you yourself, it should never come from you that you cut a sibling out of your life. It should never come from you. Unless, like I said, unless there is harm. Unless there is harm on you or your family. And if you can't coordinate for that person not to harm them. So if there's no way about it, if they're going to harm, khalas, then that's it. Then you're going to have to, remove yourself and remove them from your life to the extent manageable. You want to still be able to, like I said, I mean, you'd send an enemy a message on Eid, So, I mean, that's the least you can do for your sibling you're not talking to, but I don't think it should ever get to that stage.
Yeah, inshallah, we can all work on our relationships. I mean, I know of siblings who, one of the siblings has completely left the religion, yet they've maintained such a beautiful friendship, and it is usually the one I have in mind is the religious, I don't really want to use that word, but the one who still has, kept his religion. He's the one who maintained that relationship and worked hard on it.
Oh, yeah.
Because at the end of the day, someone who follows the religion, they know that their ultimate aim isn't this life and it's the hereafter.
Exactly.
So why would they want their sibling to be as far removed from that as possible? At least if they are the last hope for their sibling, let them keep their hand open, like you said. Thank you so much for that.
If they turn away, who is going to help them if you're not going to help them? If you're not going to be there? You have to have your hand always has to stay open.
Ahsant. I mean, you mentioned sibling, the terminology you used was let them be your friend again. And I really like that, because when I grew up, my dad always used to tell us, especially if I'm having an argument with my sister. She's your friend. Treat her like your friend.
Yes.
He used to always say that to us. So
yes, definitely.
elaborate on that. How much should we be treating our siblings as friends?
I think I'm in a very privileged position. Perhaps I'm, alhamdulillah, very blessed that me and my siblings were all very good friends. So, I mean, maybe I'm always speaking from that perspective, and someone might feel like I'm alienating them because they're not friends with their siblings. But I think this is a relationship that you have to work on. So I have two sisters and one brother. They're all younger than me, of course. The oldest sister, she's only a year younger than me. So like we're like partners. We remember everything. We used to be enemies when we were kids, but now we're not. And we always laugh about that. I think with my brother though, so there's 10 years between my brother and I, 10 years. But I remember when he was first born. I remember holding him when he was first born. So I remember how he looked like in my arms when I was 10 years old. And since then, I had a lot of love for this kid. And since he was 4 or 5 years old, I take him out with me literally everywhere. Every football session he'd watch, I used to take him to all these wrestling events and whatever he liked those. So subhanAllah, they remember that. So even if you and your siblings don't have the greatest relationship right now, then you should try to think about creating that for your kids afterwards, or with your nephews and nieces. Because if you start from early, so last night me and my brother were speaking. He's 20 years old now, and I'm 30. So we're sitting down, me, my brother, my sister, and my sister's laughing. She's saying, "Remember, you should take him to wrestling, and then you brought him home, and then you showed him tickets for the next day. You're gonna take him wrestling again." And then he's laughing so much, and he's remembering it, and it just I forgot about these things myself. But as he's saying it, I could see how much like he was appreciating those memories of his own childhood. When I left to go to Hawza, all my friends who are my age, they remained his friends. So they would come to the house and see him and take him out and everything else. And now he's 20, but his main friends are all 30 years old because they're all my friends. And he has his own friends, of course, from his age. But he always says it's a completely different experience when I'm with my friends who are my age and I'm with my friends who are your age, because the friends your age are all, in the later stages of their lives, and it allowed him to mature very quickly. So everywhere I go, literally, he's my right hand. He's my best friend. I can't really imagine my life without him. So I think it's something that someone's cheating themselves from when they don't make a friend out of their sibling. This is someone who literally shares the deepest memories with you of your parents in your house. He or she knows you the most. As much as I love my brother, my sister probably knows me the most because she remembers me when I was 4 and 5 and 6 years old. So she's still like, I know you, I know what you're like. And no one, no matter what happens, can ever relive those. I can never have another friend who can relive those things with me. That's done now. And so it's only shared between her and I, and it's very unique. So as close as I am with my brother, then me and my sister have something extremely unique that me and my brother can never have. And so it's just such a blessing. So if you're someone who right now doesn't have that relationship with their sibling, think, man, this sibling is the only person that's ever actually going to understand you fully. They're the only one that understands the problems with your mom and dad. That understands the blessings with your mom and dad. That understands the problems you went through as a kid. No one else is going to understand. You're going to explain to them, but they didn't see it.
Yeah.
Your siblings saw it. You shared a room together. You ate together. They know your favorite color and they know your favorite dish. There's so much that can be worked on. And it's such a shame you don't make a friend out of your sibling when the potential to be a best friend is right there. Not to mention you come from the same womb and you share the same genetics, and there's just too much to talk about when it comes to making a friend out of your sibling. As different as you want to be, as different as your ideas are, there's always going to be a place where you can both meet, where you can let go with each other and be friends, be actual friends. And it's going to take some effort on both their part, but it's very doable.
I love that, Sayed. I really love that. I think you've just reminded us all of how important it is for us to relive those memories. Yeah. I mean, even silly things sometimes might make you all crack up, as siblings.
My sister sends me sometimes, when we were young, they used to have the X Factor auditions and we used to watch those, and then we used to always laugh at the funny ones. And then just the other day, like she sent me one from like 2003 or whatever. I was like, oh my God, how did you find this? It was one that we just laughed at so much as kids. So it's like, now I mentioned X Factor on this Islamic podcast, but I'm a normal human being, and I was as a kid. So, um, but yeah, like she sent me that audition, and I just found it so funny because there's no one else in the world who I show this audition to that's going to laugh. If I show it to my wife, she's gonna be like, what's so funny?
Yeah.
But my sister, she's gonna remember that moment where we're sitting down and we couldn't believe how funny it was and we're just dying. And then she messages me that, and it's incredible. It's something that you can only share with that person.
Ahsan, thank you so much. Sayed, we spoke about the relationship between siblings and that they're friends. But sometimes it might happen that your sibling might do something wrong. They might be hanging around with the wrong people. They might have, gone to somewhere where, haram things can take place. And you've realized this, it's come to your knowledge as a sibling, but your parents don't know. What's your responsibility then? Do you cover up for your sibling, or do you expose them to your parent? What's your responsibility?
I think first of all, we have to realize that everyone ultimately makes their own choices, no matter who they are. So even if our parents brought us up religiously and gave us everything they could in education and a head start and everything else, that a child might end up doing something completely different to what they're supposed to do and go onto the wrong tracks of life. Just like the son of Nabi Ibrahim, the son of Nabi Nuh, alayhi salam, who stayed with the people and drowned in the flood. Just like even the imams had sons. Imagine your father is an imam. So the son of Imam Hussain al-Askari alayhi salam, as he's known as Ja'far al-Kadhab, he tried to claim that he is Imam Mahdi in the beginning, until Imam Mahdi actually came and told him, uncle, move aside. He is the brother of Imam Hussain al-Askari. So the brother of Imam Hussain al-Askari alayhi salam, he declared that he was the imam, the 12th imam. So he's the son of Imam Ali al-Hadi alayhi salam. So he's the son of an imam, a brother of an imam, and he tried to claim imamah. That's like one of the biggest harams you can do, to claim that you're Imam Mahdi. Imagine. And then Imam Mahdi came and told him, uncle, step aside. And they say that he repented. In any case, what I'm trying to get to is anyone can go down the wrong track. So that's the first thing. So not to blame yourself, mother, father, brother, sister. Don't blame yourself if someone did that, if you did everything you could to help them. Now, if you do find out that they're messing around, of course, first of all, there are many things to consider. What is it that they're doing? How dangerous is it? So that you know what kind of action to take, immediate, urgent action, or can it be something that you can give them over time? How did you find out? Did you find out by seeing a text message on their phone or by them confiding in you? What sort of relationship you have with them, so you know what kind of action to take. So this is a very loaded question. So to go through each one will take a lot of time. So I'm going to choose a scenario and go with that, inshallah. Let's say someone confided in you. Let's say your brother smoked some weed, and they've been smoking weed, getting high with their friends, and they confided in you. They're telling you, look, I have to tell you something. I've been doing this action. For them to do that, that means that they have trust in you. You don't want to break that trust. You want to be loyal to their vulnerability, so you shouldn't be going and telling your mom and dad. However, you should still remain upon the principle of al-nahi an al-munkar, and you need to forbid evil here. And you need to preach to them, basically. Don't say that you're not involved and this is their life. And no, you have to preach to them right now and tell them that where are you going? Look what you're doing to yourself. This is not from our path. You're going to lose yourself. You're in a very vulnerable position right now as a young person. If you do this, you'll get lazy. You won't be bothered for work, for school, for anything else. Slowly, if you hang around with these people long enough, you'll become like them. Show me who your friends are, I'll tell you who you are. And that's where the concept of the bad apple comes from. You put a bag of good apples, you put one bad apple in the bag and you close it. If you open it after a few hours, all the apples will be rotten. And that's what one bad apple can do. It can ruin a lot of good apples. So you want to make sure that you protect them. So you tell them, what have these people benefited you with? What have they given you? Do they actually really care? I was speaking to someone very close to me recently, subhanAllah. And this young man is very close to me, and he's known as a really tough guy, maybe one of the toughest guys I know. And he was involved in a lot of gang fights, and now he's fixed his life up. And I was talking to him, when did you make the change? And he was telling me, subhanAllah, there was one time we got into a really big fight, a really, really big fight, a big gang fight. And when we finished the fight, I sat down, and I was the one who really fought the most. But then I saw all the others, they were like celebrating, like, did you see that? Did you see what we did? Did you see how we got them? And he just thought to himself, why am I chilling out with people who are celebrating hurting others? And not one of these people would actually have done the same for me, what I had just done for them right now, put my life on the line for them. They don't really care. They're just happy that they have a tough guy on their team that they can unleash on any other opposing gang. At that moment, when he realized that these people don't really care about me, they just care about what I can give them. Even if someone can say, oh, they don't want me to be violent. Well, even you giving them comfort, you giving them legitimacy, giving them anything, then you realize they're taking, they don't give. And these people, they come and go a lot in your life. They come and go a lot. Only you'll notice the ones who truly love you, they're the ones that don't want to take from you and only want to give you and want the best for you. And you'll soon realize this. You know, a lot of the people in the majalis, you'll notice of Abu Abdullah alayhi salam in their 30s and 40s, there a lot of them, when I lecture, I realized they were the youngs that were troublemakers when they were kids. Because when they grew up, they realized, man, nothing in the world was good to me except this. Everything else took from me except this. The ones that used to force to come to the mosque, now they're the ones doing the majalis in their houses. Because they realized this was the realest, but maybe some of them, they found out too late. They found out too late, and now they work jobs they don't like because they had to go to prison or they had to do something else or they didn't do well in school or whatever else. But now they pay for their mistakes. We don't want that. So you show them the road in front of them, where they could go, the places that are good and the places that are bad. But you don't go and you rat on them unless, let's say, it starts going too far and they continue and they persevere in their actions. That's when, okay, after they cross the red line, you need to get some help. You need to find the best way to get that help, though. It's not always mom and dad. It can be uncle. It can be the one who they listen to. You have to look for the person who can have the most influence without alienating them. The last scenario is if you have to tell mom and dad. Of course, if mom and dad have a very good relationship with them, then they should be told right from the beginning if that person's okay with it. But if they're not okay with it, then you have to leave that for a moment. You have to try all the other ways, all the other avenues, until it gets to a place where, tariq masdood, that, khalas, this is now where we have to try to bring everyone involved to stop them. And this is when usually it's something huge, something more of a massive problem. If it's something more like, they're not praying, this can be done in a way in which you can strategize how to bring them back to the path, not just, confront them and make a problem out of it. And I'm telling mom and dad, but you sit down, why aren't you praying? Don't you know that prayer is the best way, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to have mercy on you when you pray and bless you when you pray? And don't you want to give thanks for everything that you have? And, things like this. So you start working on it together as a team rather than someone who is threatening them.
Hussain, thank you so much, Sayyid.
Before we end, I just wanted to ask a question regarding, we've heard so much about Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam and Imam Hussain alayhi salam's relationship. It's very beautiful, heartbreaking, but it is spoken about quite a lot. I was just wondering, do we have any stories or narrations on the relationship between Imam Hassan alayhi salam and Imam Hussain alayhi salam? Do you have any thoughts?
We have so much. Books can be written about this. When they were children, Imam Hussain and Imam Hassan alayhi salam, there are reports that when they would wrestle with each other. And I always love that narration, because I can imagine Rasulullah just sitting there watching them. Of course, he would call them Sayyiday Shabab Ahl al-Jannah. They're the heirs to his spiritual tradition and his position with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But also, I think in the later years, what people need to recognize is that when Imam al-Hassan made the treaty with Muawiyah, Imam al-Hussein was with him. People think that they're different, as if Imam al-Hassan went for peace and Imam al-Hussein went for war 10 years later, but that's not true. Imam al-Hussein was an obedient follower of Imam al-Hassan. He was an obedient follower. That's hard for some people to hear. Imam al-Hussein, Abu Abdullah, was an obedient follower of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba. When they made the treaty, Imam al-Hussein did not go against him. When Imam al-Hassan left Kufa to go to Medina, Imam al-Hussein went with him. There's no disagreement. There's no, this is not what father would have wanted. People think that they didn't have a difference of opinion. Imam al-Hussein in that position would have done the same thing. And Imam al-Hassan, if it got to Karbala, would have done the same thing, except that Yazid was very different to Muawiyah. With Muawiyah, there was still leeway. You can still have some political compromise. He still tried to be politically correct. Not to mention that the treaty, the agreement was that the Imamah comes back to the Ahlul Bayt. The Khilafah comes back to the Ahlul Bayt. Of course, they were Imams, regardless. but that the Khilafah comes back to them. When Yazid became the Khalifa, the treaty was broken. So if Imam al-Hassan was alive at the time, Imam al-Hassan would have been the one to rise up in Karbala, but Imam al-Hussein did. People need to recognize that Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam was with his brother and everything. It's when his brother left this world, it was very difficult for Abu Abdullah alayhi salam. He was the one that was with him in the room. And of course, subhanAllah, today is the day of the Shahada, actually, as we're recording this podcast right now. So listeners will listen to this later on, but this is being recorded on the day of the Shahada of Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam. On a day like this, Imam al-Hussein was in the room with Imam al-Hassan and he was crying for him as Imam al-Hassan was coughing up his blood. And as Imam al-Hassan is coughing up his blood, he says, "Why are you crying? Ya Hussein, why are you crying? La yawm ka yawmika ya Abu Abdullah." So he's coughing up his blood and his liver and he's about to die. Imam al-Hussein is crying right there, comforting him. And then he says to him, "My brother, why are you crying? You're the one that's going to be alone. I'm the one that's with you right now. At least you're with me. I'm dying in your arms. But on that day, you're going to be alone." Of course, he knew about the day of Karbala because it was prophesied to them from when they were young. So look at that relationship. You're dying, your brother's crying for you, and you're telling him, "Don't cry for me. Like, I wish I would be there when you were on your last day." So it's, subhanAllah, even in your last moments, you're giving towards your sibling. So this is our tradition. This is Islam. This is how Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi and Ahlul Bayt led by example and showed us how to be with our siblings.
And they are the best example. Thank you so much for inspiring us with the stories from the lives of the Ahlul Bayt. I want to read this book, the book about Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein's relationship. I think as a parent, I want to learn from their relationship as well, not just as a sibling. Thank you so much, Sayyid. Are there any final thoughts?
Final thoughts. My grandfather, who's a very old man right now, he used to say something to my mother a lot when she was a child, her and her siblings. He used to say, "حبوا بعض حبوا بعض بعدين حتسافروا ما عادش حتشوفوا بعض حتشتاقوا لبعض." So let me translate. He said, love each other, love each other. When you guys grow up, you're all going to travel. You're not going to see each other anymore. You're going to miss each other. My mother always told me about that. "Oh, I remember when your grandfather would say that to me and how right he was. We would fight and he would say, حبوا بعض, love each other. And now I don't get to see my siblings as much as I want to and I miss them." So she always tells me and my siblings all the time now, all the time, حبوا بعض, حبوا بعض. But alhamdulillah, that love is there with me and my siblings. And I always remember that line, love each other, love each other. And I use it all the time now. I use it with my siblings or my parents or friends or anyone else. Whenever there's any small dispute, I'm like, "Hey, حبوا بعض, حبوا بعض." So I will end this with حبوا بعض, love each other. My brothers and sisters, my friends, love each other. You never know what you have till it's gone. And cherish that which you have right now.
Ahsant, that was a perfect ending to our podcast. Thank you so much, Sayyid Hussain Makke. Unfortunately, we've come to the end of today's episode, but thank you so much for making the time for us to discuss this really important topic.
Thank you for having me. Shukran.
Thank you. And we want to thank you all for tuning in. Feel free to leave us a comment on our social media handles, and to find out more, please visit our website, thegoodtree.faith.
Till next week, fi amanillah.
Join us next week with Sayyid Hadi Rizvi as we discuss our relationship with friends.